Welcome to Reshair on ESPN 730. For the next hour, your host, Chris Reshaar, will bring fresh air to your financial needs. Excite, educate, and empower you to make sound financial decisions. Chris is a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with Movement Mortgage, equal housing lender, originator license number 117266. Now, here's your host, Chris Reshaar.
Welcome to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshaar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. If you have never tuned into Reshair Radio, you know, just as you heard in our intro, the goal of the show is to excite, educate, and empower Charlotte teens to make sound financial decisions. Wow, aren't you so excited before the sports come up on later after my show? You get to listen to sound financial advice. But if you haven't listened to the show, hopefully you have before. But really it's about talking about what's going on in our marketplace, whether it's real estate trends, mortgage finance trends, homeowners insurance, life insurance, you name it. We've got a great show ahead of us here today. I'm excited to introduce our host and our expert contributor and our guest here this morning. So let me just mention before we go into our theme for the day is we have I do a Mortgage Matters segment each and every week, and that Mortgage Matters segment really is about just kind of bringing you up to speed on what some of the trends are in the mortgage world, since that's what I do each and every day. And I just wanted to throw out that I am still looking for first-time buyers right now who may be eligible for the North Carolina Home Advantage program, and that's a $15,000 down payment assistance program. The state of North Carolina has put out a limited number of reservations for a first-time buyer that they can use. This crazy $15,000 to help you buy a home to pay for the down payment and closing costs. So it's not every day those kinds of dollars are floating around for a first-time buyer. So as Volkswagen, I coined it drivers wanted. I'm going to shift that a little and say buyers wanted, right? Anyone that you know may be in need of wanting to buy their first home. A first-time buyer means anyone that hasn't owned a home in the last 3 years. That if they are interested in buying a home in Mecklenburg or Cabarrus County, we've got $15,000 to give out. That's pretty exciting stuff. So that's my Mortgage Matters segment. Just want to make sure our listeners know that. If you need to reach me for any purpose and you know somebody, my number is 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. And you can just text me, I want 15,000. There you go. That'll work. So without further ado, I'd like to jump in and let's go ahead and introduce our guests on the show here today. So first of all, I'd like to welcome back Sandy Solomon. Sandy, welcome back.
Hi, Chris. It's great to be back.
Sandy, tell us a little bit about who you work for and what you do.
Absolutely. So, Chris, I'm a local area financial professional, and I represent AXA Advisors. And probably now would be a good time, if I may, just take a moment to do a quick disclosure.
Absolutely.
During our time together today, it's important to remind the listeners that we are intending to educate and not provide specific tax or legal advice, and that any and all examples are hypothetical and are not a guarantee of performance or an endorsement of any product. Listeners should always seek the advice of a financial professional, tax advisor, or attorney about their specific situation. And AXA Advisors, LLC is located in New York, New York. Our number is 212-314-4600, and we are members of FINRA, the SIPC, and affiliated with the AXA Network, LLC.
Aren't you glad you tuned in, listener?
Don't you love those disclosures?
That's right, yeah. My technical disclosure is I am a licensed loan officer. Movement Mortgage is an equal housing lender, and my NMLS license number is 117266. There we go.
So maybe I could do what you asked now and just tell the listeners quickly what we do.
Absolutely.
We do three things.
What you do.
Yeah,
exactly.
We do three things primarily. For our clients that are at or near retirement, we help them create and envision a plan of sustainable, predictable income. For our clients with young families, we help them create a plan for financial independence. And for our clients that are business owners, we help them with a variety of services related to succession planning, buy-sell agreements, and employee benefits.
Wow, that's a lot. Sounds like you're busy.
Yes.
Perfect. So let's kind of roll to introducing our guests. And Sandy, you are an expert contributor. You've been on the show several times with me before. And as always, thank you for having me. But you've brought a guest of your own, and we've met before, David Dufault with Sodoma Law. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, David, I know you've got 22 years in the business. We won't hold that against you, right?
That's right.
And I know you've got some degrees, Wake, and was it Campbell? Is that right?
Correct.
Perfect. So tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and how you kind of got to doing what you do.
So I've been in Charlotte for 22 years. My wife's a native Charlottean. She brought me back here. As you said, I work at Sodoma Law. We're a mid-sized firm in Charlotte. We have offices in Union County. My practice is focused on estate planning and business planning. And in that regard, I work with individuals, families, businesses to try to help them plan for things that they are doing now and things that are going to happen to them over time.
That's right. Certain things are inevitable, right?
Exactly. Death and taxes. And
That's right. Perfect. So how did you essentially get started in the business?
Well, I've always enjoyed talking with people and learning about their situations. And in estate and business planning, a lot of times the goals are very similar, but the ways that we get there can be different.
Okay.
Each family, each business has their own story. They've got their own unique circumstances. And, I like talking to people and hearing what they've got to say and then trying to help them reach their goals.
I think at the end of the day, that's partially what all three of us do, right? Because each one of us has a client that may have different needs in our industries. But it's really doing the deep dive and determining what their needs are, what they're really trying to accomplish, and using our professional skills to help them to the best that we can. And sometimes it's collaborating with one another, right? It's not necessarily that you can do everything that you need for your client, but I know that two of you work together on a regular basis because, Sandy, when you're helping with someone with financial needs, they may have, estate needs, and they may just set certain things up, and vice versa. So pretty cool. It's why you're a good marriage here today for our show. All right, so let's talk a little bit about kind of where we're headed with today's show. I'd like to really just share with our listeners that, it seems like, on a regular basis, because I do mortgage loans for people, that that tends to be, the show tends to sort of theme around a lot of real estate related topics. And that's okay, because that's really kind of a trendy thing and it's part of what I do. But I really, the goal as the show host here is to bring variety also to what we share with our listeners. And today really, our theme really is about wills, trusts, and more. And I think that for me, being in the mortgage industry, I've dealt with customers that are buying homes and they want to do it in the name of a trust. And we're dealing with people that have family members that pass on and how to move real estate through these kinds of situations. But you guys, the two of you, with what you do every day, I just felt like this was such an important topic to bring to the table because the financial plan is really built around some of these things and vice versa, right? A lot of what you do impacts the financial plan and how people move through those plans. And so I'm really, really excited about what we're talking about today. So why don't we kind of jump in here, and I'd like to, David, sort of start with you and helping our listeners understand, what kinds of things should they be putting in place for them if something happens to them while they're living and they remain living, right? So we're going to be talking about somewhat what I call almost sensitive topics, right? But they're hard topics to talk about, but they're important that we talk about. And I use the example of if for some reason I become disabled, right? There would be some decisions that my family would have to make. And I'm going to let you sort of jump in, and since you kind of helped me craft this outline for the show. So there's things that we need to plan for those that are living and things that we need to plan for those that are no longer living. And that's kind of the direction we're headed. So let's you jump in.
Exactly. With estate planning, I like to tell clients that there's two sides of it. There are the things that are going to be useful while you're living. And then there's obviously the part that comes into play when you die. A lot of people don't consider the lifetime part of it. There are circumstances where disability is going to arise, where you're not going to be able to manage things on your own. Those can be financial matters. Those can be real estate issues. They can be healthcare decisions. And so when we're trying to plan for that, one of the things we always want to include are powers of attorney, financial powers of attorney, so that if I'm not able to manage my affairs, this is the person that I would entrust to do that for me.
And that is essentially a legal document that
Correct.
You and your staff would draft.
Correct.
That says my wife, my brother, whoever it might be, can help make some of these important decisions if for some reason, perhaps I haven't passed away, but I can't make those decisions on my own. Maybe I even get Alzheimer's, right?
Exactly.
You just don't know.
Exactly. Those documents are going to last. It can last for a number of years, and they're designed to anticipate certain things that can or will happen, that don't leave you in a circumstance where you've got to petition the court to get the court's approval to do something. Most people would be more comfortable in saying, I'm going to designate my spouse or my brother to make those decisions for me, rather than put that choice in the hands of a court.
Right, like pulling the plug.
Yeah, exactly. And that could be another issue.
Something we have I'm sure you have all kinds of examples. I can't wait to hear some of them today. So exactly. But all right, so that's basically what a power of attorney is, and I'll have you sort of break down. Let's start with number one. You said power of attorney could be needed for real estate owned and/or bank accounts. Talk to us about that.
So again, what a power of attorney is doing is allowing you to designate the person to make decisions for you. And once they have that power, they are considered a fiduciary and are obligated to make the decisions or make the choices in your best interest, for your benefit. And in that capacity, they can deal with your bank accounts, execute signed checks for you. They can deal with the DMV as it would relate to your cars. They can deal with...
let somebody else deal with the DMV. I like that idea.
They can deal with your real estate if a property needs to be sold, if you're refinancing, and maybe you're not physically or mentally capable to execute and understand the documents. Your durable financial power of attorney can take your place and execute those on your behalf.
Right.
Filing taxes, dealing with insurance policies.
That's a lot of stuff. And I think this show is particularly of interest for those that maybe even have family members that are aging, right? That are going, my mom or my dad are starting to get to the point, I'm starting to get concerned, and I don't know if they're going to be of the sound mind to really make these decisions, and someone's going to have to step in. So I think this show can really apply to people in that situation.
Exactly. And that's where it becomes important to make those choices prospectively and proactively, instead of finding out that mom or dad doesn't have the capacity to make the decision anymore, and then you don't have that option anymore.
Right.
You've got to go to
the
court.
They have to rely on the will of whatever that person was, even though they may not be of capacity to make those decisions.
Exactly.
That can be a little scary. So we have so much to talk about, but believe it or not, we are already out of time. We have to take a quick break. Again, I've got Sandy Solomon here with AXA Advisors and David Dufault with Sodoma Law. And we're really talking about wills, trusts, and more. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. This is Chris Reshaar, your host of Reshair Radio. As a mortgage professional, we interact with several industry-related professionals, and we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I have a choice to select a closing attorney either to purchase or do a refinance, I choose John Ringer with Hutchins Law Firm. He is a legal professional and he covers commercial and residential transactions. More than just a closing attorney, John wants to be your attorney for life. He can provide you insights you need to make accurate and informed legal decisions. As a Charlotte native, John has witnessed the tremendous growth and development of our city and region. As a part of Hutchins Law Firm with more than a quarter century of experience and 400 years of collective combined legal experience, they have what you're looking for. They have offices in Charlotte, Fayetteville, Wilmington, and Columbia, South Carolina. Please give John a call if you need an attorney, the right attorney, at 980-275-9810. That's 980-275-9810.
Did you know it has been reported that an estimated 80% of Americans have credit inaccuracies on their credit reports? Most people that have either inaccuracies or existing items that can be negotiated or adjusted do not know what their best score could be until they have found a new home, or buying a new car, or applying for a credit card. Then it's too late, and they have to accept a higher interest rate or lose the opportunity altogether. The time to work on improving your credit score is before you need it. Whether you have a 440, 640, or even a 740 FICO score, there is always room for improvement. The National Credit Care Team is comprised of individuals dedicated to helping the millions of consumers plagued by credit inaccuracies, errors, and fraud. It is our mission to help inform consumers and alleviate the stress of working with creditors and credit bureaus. Together, we can maximize your scores to get the best interest rates possible and save you money. Call now, 303-747-6390. That's 303-747-6390. Or visit us at www.nationalcreditcare.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshaar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. If you have not tuned into an episode of Reshair Radio in the past, really the show is about empowering, educating, and exciting Charlotte teens to make sound financial decisions. And I've really been eager to have this show come out for our listeners because I feel like there's so much to be learned. And we're here with David Dufault with Sedona Law, really just an estate planning attorney, and also helps with some business planning, I understand. But we're really talking about wills, trusts, and more. And Dave, right before our break, you were talking about the importance of having a power of attorney so that if something happens to you and you're still, quote unquote, living, that somebody can step in and make some legal decisions for you on your behalf, hopefully with some of your wishes and desires that you've identified up front within those documents. And a power of attorney really is giving that authority to somebody else. And we briefly mentioned that can work for people that are buying and selling homes, or people that need to take over your budget and write checks for you. But I think one of the big things that I think is of interest probably to our listeners is that healthcare power of attorney, which really in a tough moment can make or break whether or not your wishes are honored, or if the courts are making decisions on your behalf because your family member doesn't have power of attorney. It can get a little dicey. So talk to our listeners about what a healthcare power of attorney is, and maybe give some examples of what can happen if you don't have one, or really what it's designed to do to help somebody. And maybe you've seen examples of where you've done it for somebody and it's really worked optimally.
So yeah, a healthcare power of attorney is similar in nature to a financial, except we're dealing with medical decisions. When an individual doesn't have either the mental capacity or understanding, or just simply can't communicate what kind of medical decisions they want, designating a healthcare power of attorney allows that individual to have the right person advocating for them. So should we consent to a surgery? Should we authorize treatment at hospital X versus hospital Y? If the situation gets to the point where we are at near-death circumstances, should your healthcare agent be granted the authority to make a decision about end-of-life decisions, pulling the plug? To sort of
pulling a plug, that's a big decision to make for somebody.
Exactly, which is why a lot of thought needs to go into who that person's going to be. Do they have the same ideas? Are they capable of making that tough decision when the time comes? And so in designating those people, it becomes important to be comfortable with who they are. And then again, with all of these, we're trying to make sure that the people that are designated are the ones that you would want. There are mechanisms for a court to do this for you, but then you're putting your choice in somebody else's hands.
Right. And give us an example if you had somebody that you've helped get a healthcare power of attorney and maybe you've seen the benefits of that for them.
Well, I think most of probably the most common are going to be circumstances where maybe a party isn't married.
Okay.
But they've got a significant other, whether that be a partner or a lifetime relationship. That status, just because they're living together or they've been together for a number of years, doesn't grant them any authority over making a medical decision. Even
though that is their partner, their life partner that they care about so much.
Exactly. The individual's parent or a sibling, a more blood relative, would be given a higher priority and would have a better right or better legal right to make that kind of decision. And so when we've got circumstances where parties aren't related by marriage, we'd absolutely want to have them designate the right person. The other side to that is in cases of divorce. Until the divorce is final, typically the parties are still married. If a decision has
she says pull the plug.
When you're going through that separation and there is that time period where you are still married and not yet divorced, an argument could be made that maybe that separated spouse has some rights that you wouldn't want them to have.
That's fascinating to think about.
And that can, like you said, pulling the plug can be a decision, but if you're separated, you probably don't want that person making any decisions for you.
So you may need to rethink your healthcare power of attorney.
Yes, and probably pretty soon if you are
right.
in that process. Because what we're doing with all of these types of plans is trying to take the unexpected out of the situation. You may think it's not going to be an issue. I'm going to get to the divorce or whatever the circumstance will be, and I'll make the change there. But we could walk out of the studio this morning and our lives could change in an instant. And not having a document or having the wrong document could really put everybody in a bind.
Yeah, and I'm going to step in here and use an example. My grandmother lived, I think, I can't even remember. I think she was like 96 or something crazy. But she had fallen down the stairs and hurt herself and went unconscious. And we took her into the hospital, and she wasn't coming back. And there was no healthcare power of attorney in place. And so my mom had to make the decision to pull the plug. But she didn't know if that was what her mom wanted or not, right? And so she took on a lot of anxiety and really was hard on herself about, am I doing the right thing here? And, we cooperated with her and said, she's lived a healthy 96 years and, was still climbing stairs at 96 and doing dishes, and an amazing lady in terms of her health, and it's going to be okay. But that wasn't fun for the family to go through that experience. And I'm assuming that these are the kinds of things that you have conversations with your clients.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because especially when parents are considering appointing their children to that position, from the legal standpoint, anybody that's 21 or over can make that choice. I think that's a tough call for a 21-year-old to have to make the decision about potentially pulling the plug on mom or dad.
Sure.
It's a different situation when you've got a 96-year-old
exactly.
parent.
I mean, we got through it. It was okay, but it still wasn't fun, right?
Exactly. But a 21-year-old or a 19 or 20-year-old probably not, doesn't have the maturity level, doesn't have the experience in life to be able to, in my opinion, make that kind of decision. And I think when parties are designating somebody in that role, I always like to make sure that that's something that they've considered. What's that going to be like for that 21-year-old to know that they were the one that maybe actually said, yes, let's disconnect mom from the life support.
Right.
They're going to have a lot of years where that's maybe weighing on their conscience.
Yeah. I'm beginning to think we should have aired the show on Halloween. But regardless, let me just kind of jump in here. If you're just tuning in, you're listening to Reshair Radio, and we've got David Dufault here with Sodoma Law, really a estate attorney and planner, etc. And we're really just talking about some important topics, and that's like your powers of attorney. You can't even say that. Should you be in a situation where you need someone to make decisions around your real estate or finances, and we've been really talking about healthcare power of attorney. If you need David's services for any of these kinds of things, and you probably do if you're listening to the show, because there's not enough people that are fully prepared. And I take that very serious, that I want my listeners to say, you know what, I need to listen to Reshair, Chris Reshatar, and call David and really have a conversation with him around where you are with some of these things. My number is 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. You can call me, or you can just text me and say, I need Dave. Is that cool, Dave? And I'll get him over to you. And while I'm not trying to push you to use his services, there are many estate planners and attorneys out there that will help you. I want you to talk with somebody, right? And I've got great people here that I have on the show that are extremely experienced and are designed and are brought in specifically for you and your education and your benefit. So before we go to the next break, we've got a few minutes yet. Let's talk a little bit about guardianship, what that is and what we need to plan for.
Yeah, great. So guardianship, most people tend to probably think of that as it would relate to minor children.
Okay.
What happens with the minor children? Where are they going to be until they hit age 18? Guardianship can also be can involve adults. If an individual is incapacitated,
disabled,
a guardianship might need to be appointed for them. That's really the court process of the court designating somebody to do that. But we can accomplish the same thing through these powers of attorney. In a durable power of attorney, it's very common for us to say, if a guardian would need to be appointed for my financial matters, this is who I would want it to be. So again, taking the place of the court action. Same thing with the healthcare power of attorney. If a guardian needs to be appointed to make medical or decisions about me personally, this is who I would want, replacing the court process. But again, for minors, that there's that issue of if mom or dad are not available, either through death, disability, some sort of absence. It's probably advisable for the parents to have some document that would say, if I can't be available, intentionally or unintentionally, this is where I would want my children to be. Let them stay with their grandparent, their aunt, uncle. Let them stay with a family friend instead of some sort of governmental or foster or DSS agency. Again, it's about making sure that the children are in the most comfortable position. And when we have the ability to make that decision, express those wishes, I think that's always a better option than relying on a court or some third party to make that decision for us. And that's really what estate planning is all about, is getting our wishes out there, making them known, designating who we want, instead of being reliant on somebody that may not know us at all and is trying to make a decision without all the information and facts.
Yeah, that's perfect. You're right. I mean, that's really at the heart of what you do. And this is obviously one of the components of the planning piece that you work through. What I'd like to do is, just sort of recap where really this segment really is about sort of having a power of attorney in place for these components, real estate, finances, healthcare, guardianship, whatever it might be. And you will absolutely have a conversation with any of our listeners to tell them what they need to start that process. And I'm assuming they could meet with you and get these things in place.
Absolutely.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. Again, if any of what we're sharing with you is of interest and you need to have this part of your estate planned better, or just done it all, right? Because you haven't done it, please reach out to me at 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. And we'll make sure we get David Dufault and you connected. Just text me and say, I need Dave, and we'll go from there. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
When choosing an insurance agency, you want a company you can trust. We are an independent insurance agency that can protect your personal assets, including your home, your business assets, as well as health and insurance needs. A true one-stop solution provider. We do not work for an insurance company. We work for you. As an independent insurance agency, our duty is to our clients' best interests. It is our responsibility to provide you the best service and the best coverage at the best possible price. You will have the added benefit of working with agents who understand your needs. After visiting our website, we will schedule an exploratory appointment to discuss your specific needs. Please visit our website at www.movementinsurance.com. That's www.movementinsurance.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshair, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. And if you have not been listening to our show prior to this segment, I really hope you go back and listen to our show. You can listen to, or even find us on ESPN.net and listen to the podcast. You can go out to my Facebook page, Christopher Reshaar, and find me and listen to our show. But we're really talking about estate planning, and we just sort of wrapped up talking about power of attorneys and kind of why they're important, specifically around healthcare power of attorneys, etc. But pretty good stuff.
Yeah, Chris, when we were planning the show a few weeks ago, we didn't know that I would have an example in my own family this week. In fact, I just came straight to the show from the hospital where my mom has been admitted, and we are going to be relying on a healthcare power of attorney to make some decisions about her care and transferring her to a rehab facility and when she's going to be able to come home. And because she took a fall and has been unable to communicate, she's unable to walk, this very week in my own family, we've needed to depend on these documents. And when we took those documents to the hospital, they didn't ask any questions about the authority that we had to help make decisions on my mom's behalf.
Wow, that's really powerful. And sorry to hear about your mom.
That's really what we're trying to put in place, is so that when those circumstances come up, unexpected situations, you've got the right documents in place to make the choices that need to be made.
Perfect. You couldn't say that any better. So, David, why don't you tell us now as we talk about kind of the inevitable, if someone passes away or dies, those documents, and we refer to them as the will, and then maybe we'll also briefly talk about a trust.
Right. So most people are familiar with the idea of a will. It defines where our assets are going to go at our death. It allows us to identify, again, those appropriate people that will carry out that process. It's not an instantaneous thing where we die and then our assets automatically go to somebody else. There's a process that governs that, it controls it. It's all set forth in the will. Trusts are something that I think years ago, most people sort of looked at those as being, well, you've got to be uber wealthy, you've got to have a ton of money in order to need a trust.
Yeah, and that was really my question. That is, what is a trust and when would we really need one?
So at its most basic, a trust is really just a contract. It's just an arrangement that controls or defines how certain property is going to be used or passed on. I think anybody that's got minor children, even anybody that's got children that might be under the age of 30, it's advisable for them to at least consider a trust. For minors, they can't own the property that they're going to inherit from you. And so a trust allows you to, again, designate somebody that can hold it, manage it, make sure that it's distributed for the children's benefit at certain times, on certain instances, as they attain certain goals. Even when they're in their early 20s, sometimes even their early 30s, there are plenty of examples out there where adult children just don't make the right choices.
They're still children some way.
Exactly. And in the right circumstances, a trust can be used for those children as well, to make sure that what they are being left is protected.
Yeah.
And so really, again, I think anybody, especially with minor children, should consider a trust. It doesn't have to be a standalone document. It can be something that is part of the will. But the nice thing about them is because they are contractual in nature, there are a lot of different ways that we can put them together, which goes back to why I like doing this. There isn't a one-size-fit-all estate plan for everybody. The idea of sort of cookie-cutter plans that you can find on the internet or some of the national companies, that's why I would say talk with somebody local. Let them know.
It may be better than nothing, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
It's better to go with a handcrafted plan that fits your needs.
That's tailored to the jurisdiction where you live.
Got it.
Somebody in California drafting your will when you live in North Carolina may not be the wisest choice.
Got it. Great. Well, awesome. This is really, really fascinating stuff, and I'm glad that we're really having this conversation. So our listeners can also come to you, David, if they need to get a will in place and or even have that conversation about whether or not their estate warrants maybe doing a trust, depending on who their heirs are.
Exactly.
Great. So if you're just tuning in or you're just interested in learning more about this and what David has to offer at Sodoma Law, please give me a call at 704-277-4463. That's 704-277-4463. And just text me and say, I need Dave. So Sandy, we're going to roll over to you and kind of get you engaged in our process here as the financial advisor in the studio. And I know that there's a lot of, like I said earlier in our show, there's a lot of collaboration between you and an estate planner like David with your clients. So where are some of the more common causes or questions or concerns that you have when you're working with your clients?
Absolutely, Chris. I'd like to start my segment by saying that it's possible to have an estate plan, wills and trusts and powers of attorney, and no financial plan. And then it's possible to have a financial plan, retirement savings and college funding and survivorship plans and all of that, and no will and trust. And so my work involves making certain that our clients have actually created the plan. And what we usually ask about when it comes to estate planning, is there a will in place? How long has it been since those documents have been reviewed? In my experience, it's probably been a long time.
Right.
Any chance your will was created when you were married previously? There's a mistake I see a lot. Did you reside in a different state at the time that you created your will? So my experience is that those documents probably haven't been reviewed in quite some time, which could really foreshadow some problems in the future.
Yeah, makes sense.
So in addition to the will, other documents that we've talked about that need to be in good order, trust for children, health care powers of attorney, durable power of attorney, are all those in place? Oftentimes, when people aren't in touch with an estate attorney or if they already have someone, it's been too long since the last comprehensive review. Things change. People move. As they get older, like with my mom, their health circumstances can change. Sometimes they begin to have issues related to competency, to mental capacity.
Yep.
The capacity for good judgment and sound decision-making often decrease as we get older.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as we're sitting here doing this show, I'm thinking, yeah, I've got my will in place. I'm feeling good that it was probably 10 years ago, and I probably need to have Dave check that out for me. I don't know. But thank you for the reminder, Sandy.
Well,
Yes.
and to Sandy's point, talking about people aging, a lot of times we have designated the appropriate people as our powers of attorney, but they're getting older just like we are.
Well, true.
And so when I'm 40 and I've
Faster than me.
designated my
They're-
mother as my power of attorney, and now I'm 50 and she's 80, she may not be the appropriate choice anymore. And so we may need to revisit it from that standpoint as well.
Perfect.
Sometimes it will be someone like the attorney or the financial advisor that will be first to recognize changes in the cognitive ability of our clients. And we have a duty, David and I both do, a duty and a responsibility to the client and to the family, to their children, to report any misgivings that we have about the competency that may arise from our discussions of their plans.
Yeah, that makes absolutely sense. So let's kind of talk about the idea of estate creation that I've heard about, for a minute. But what can you share with our listeners about, the idea of estate creation?
Well, that's actually a great question, Chris, and I appreciate it. That's where my work really begins. One argument that I hear pretty often is, I don't really have all that much, so why do I need to do any estate planning? I think David has already mentioned that one time in the show. And this may seem like an oversimplification, but the most important thing that I can do for my clients as a financial professional is to help them plan for the creation of an estate. We all have to start somewhere. And this is supposed to happen over a lifetime. And as long as everything goes according to some theoretical plan, we expect to accumulate stuff. We expect to acquire some personal property, a home, some real estate, some savings and investments, right? And that's supposed to happen.
I sure hope so.
Yes, that's the whole purpose of your show and of my work. So the problem arises when things don't go according to that plan. We have the ability, for instance, through the use of insurance products, to create an immediate state for our clients when things don't go as expected. And so someone who hasn't accumulated much money yet, but who purchased some life insurance and then suddenly died or prematurely died, that immediately creates an estate for their heirs, for their beneficiaries. So that deals with the problem of premature death or possibly disability. And here's where I'd introduce the idea that every life has an economic value. Financial advisors talk about that a lot, and you'll hear that referred to as the human life value. That's what the academics call it. And most wealth, you'll find, comes from two sources. The average person is going to create their estate by a lifetime of work accompanied by saving. So working without saving won't do it. It won't happen if you don't work. We can expect some wealth maybe to be inherited.
Yeah.
A lucky few may
We
win the
hope so.
lottery, or find a shipwrecked treasure.
Not a lucky few even on that.
All right. So it would be fun, I think, to give the listeners an easy example. So here goes. Let's pretend a young woman enters the workforce after college and she's 24 years old and her salary is $35,000 a year. If she receives no more than a simple cost of living increase, she works continuously until normal retirement age, and let's just use the Social Security model, and let's say she works to age 67, which is currently full retirement age. In this basic example of human life value, her lifetime earnings surprisingly will total over $3 million. It's actually $3,065,117 to be exact.
Cool.
Even if we discount the lifetime earnings to account for tax, you still come away with a $2 million economic impact. So that human life value is, even after taxes, over $2 million. So question for the audience is, if you had an asset that you knew would appraise for $2 million, would it make any sense to insure that asset? We insure homes and autos that have a lot less value than that.
Got it. So what and that's very interesting. You talk about example and making sure the protection is there. What are some of the problems related to estate planning that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Well, one problem we encounter in our reviews with our clients is that over a lifetime of work and moving around, and raising a family, the usual stuff, it's very common for the estate to look something like a junk drawer. That's what I call it. It's the junk drawer approach to estate planning. And each and every item in that drawer made sense at the time it was acquired. You change employment, and so maybe you leave behind an old retirement plan, or at various points in life you might purchase some insurance or make an investment somehow. So
it's just not really fully planned out. It's just kind of pieced together as you move through life.
Exactly.
And Sandy, I'm going to jump in here because we actually are out of time for this segment. It just keeps going and going, and it just happens to go so fast. So we're going to be right back for our last segment. We're going to continue our conversation around this estate planning and making sure that we've got the proper things in place between our two contributors here on our show. So again, you're listening to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
When choosing an insurance agency, you want a company you can trust. We are an independent insurance agency that can protect your personal assets, including your home, your business assets, as well as health and insurance needs. A true one-stop solution provider. We do not work for an insurance company. We work for you. As an independent insurance agency, our duty is to our clients' best interests. It is our responsibility to provide you the best service and the best coverage at the best possible price. You will have the added benefit of working with agents who understand your needs. After visiting our website, we will schedule an exploratory appointment to discuss your specific needs. Please visit our website at www.movementinsurance.com. That's www.movementinsurance.com.
Welcome back to Reshair Radio. I'm your show host, Chris Reshatar, licensed loan officer with Movement Mortgage. If you've listened to Reshair Radio before, the show really is about empowering, exciting, educating Charlotte teams to make sound financial decisions. And we do that by bringing on expert contributors that we have here, Sandy Solomon from Act Advisors. And we bring in also local guests and experts like David. Help me out, David.
Dufault.
Dufault, thank you. My brain is going here. It's the last segment here with Sodoma Law. And we're really, at the end of the day, the show is about bringing in these local experts so that our listeners can gain knowledge on a variety of topics. And really, we've been talking about estate planning. And Sandy, right before we were on the break, I had introduced the idea of what are some of the problems that you see related to estate planning so that our listeners can kind of get an idea of, where they fit in their own estate plan and maybe address some of those needs.
Right, Chris. And in the last segment, I introduced the idea that many of the people present themselves with this thing I call the junk drawer.
Yes.
And I just want to make sure the listeners understand that is in no way a criticism of what they've been doing. It's actually the best thing that can happen is that along the way you're making decisions, you're investing for retirement, you're purchasing insurance products, you're making decisions that are perfectly appropriate at the time. And so when people end up coming to me, they often have a bunch of this stuff already accomplished, and what they need to do is make sure that it all makes sense together, that it's a cohesive plan. And I'll just give you an example.
You're going to organize the junk drawer.
I'm going to organize the junk drawer. That's a great way to put it. Thank you, Chris.
Take the day off.
You understand me. That's what I do. Just wanted to give you an example of a client that came in recently, and over a lifetime of work, this gentleman happened to own a business in the local area. He was an architect, really fine guy. He came in and he had 16 different brokerage accounts. 16 different accounts at 16 different firms. Each one of them contained a bunch of securities, stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, things like that. And we literally were able to consolidate those accounts down from 16 to 2. So you can only imagine how much simpler it is for my client to understand what he has, for us to manage it, and also for his heirs later on to know what they have.
Yeah, as we were talking about that power of attorney, do you really want to be the power of attorney over somebody's 16 different brokerage accounts and managing where it goes and all that's going on there? That's a lot.
It happens.
The estate planner, I thank you for consolidating that from 16 to 2.
You're welcome, David. You're welcome. So when we conduct our comprehensive review, we meet with our clients periodically, usually annually is probably a good interval. We double check important details. One important detail is, in your plan, who are your intended beneficiaries? Maybe things have changed. Have you remarried?
Right.
In some cases,
Do you
children
still want
predeceased
that,
parents.
Do you still want that person you picked the first time?
That's right. That's right.
So you just don't know.
Has anything changed?
Right.
Those intended beneficiaries, how can they be contacted? There are death benefit claims at insurance companies all over where the beneficiaries can't be found. Should contingent beneficiaries be named in case of a second death? Have instructions been filed, transfer on death instructions, and on the account you'll see it listed as TOD. So for our listeners that don't know what that means, the account may say Chris Reshair, TOD, that means transfer on death. That to me indicates that instructions have been filed with that bank account or that financial institution on what's supposed to happen with those account proceeds if the account owner dies. Here's a good one, a real important one. I bet David's seen this before. Do you have important papers that are in a lockbox or a safety deposit vault in a bank, and are you the only person that can gain access in case of an emergency? And so if you have put your important papers in a bank lockbox, make sure someone else that you can depend on has signatory rights so that if something happens to you, we can get to those documents.
Or just simply know where they are.
Exactly.
That's I recently had a conversation with my mom, and she said, I wanted to talk with you. My husband and I would like you to be the beneficiary. And she said, are you okay with that? And I said, well, you asked us 10 years ago. We said yes 10 years ago. We're fine with that. But, I told her, I said, what's going to be important for me is I'm going to need to know where you're keeping these documents. I said, and ideally, as somebody that's going to take over your estate, I'd like to have a copy. Make me a copy, and then I'll know exactly how to execute your documents and whatever your wishes are. And, she kind of went, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? I didn't think of that, because she's like, well, I keep it in the hallway closet in that little tin box. And I'm thinking, I don't know what closet she's talking about. I don't know what tin box she's talking about. And if it's 10 years from now, who knows, right? I don't know. So these are important conversations that you should be having with your family members, both parents and or your children. If you're in the same situation, they need to know where your documents are in a case like, sorry for me to.
Well, that's a great segue to my last comment, and that is, I'd ask the listeners to give some thought to this. Have you given a complete inventory of your property, your real estate, your investment assets, your retirement savings, your insurance plans? Have you given a complete inventory to a trusted advisor somewhere or to your loved ones just in case? And we have several tools that we use with our clients to help them build this inventory. And when it's done correctly, we can literally hand them one page that has a map of where their assets are. And if the fact finding is complete and something happens to someone, the beneficiary can call my office and we will know how to help them figure out everything. And believe me, if you've ever come into contact with someone who, after they passed away, their heirs really didn't know what the plan was, it's excruciatingly painful to try to unwind all that. And sometimes I even had a case where a client came in with a cardboard box. I helped one of our clients find several $100,000 in annuities that she didn't know she had, that her husband had purchased long ago, had been forgotten about. That box could have been thrown in the garbage, and it probably would have been if it hadn't been for us. So we would just ask you, have you created an inventory, and does someone you care about know where it is?
Yeah, that very, very interesting. I like that box story. That's really, really cool. So, David, why don't you share with our listener just a little bit about what you've maybe seen in your experience working with estate planning and some of your clients and some of the challenges that you've seen when people aren't doing the right thing?
Well, I think just to sort of pick up on what Sandy was just saying, the idea of making sure people know where your stuff is and what you've got, that roadmap that he talked about can be, very important. And one thing that he didn't mention, and not to boil it all down to money, but having that roadmap can save your estate or your heirs a ton of money, because they're not wasting time just looking for stuff. I had an administration.
Or missing things.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
I had an example one time where we were dealing with an estate and it was 2 years in. and we thought we were going to close it, and somebody found something in a box, and it took an extra 6 months. Now, that was 6 months of additional time, money, expense, and just delaying the heirs eventually getting what they wanted or what they were supposed to get. From the planning side, I think probably the biggest things that I see are if they have a plan in place, that it's not all consistent. A good plan involves the utilization of the attorney, the financial planner, and making sure that all of the assets are addressed properly. Again, consolidating from 16 down to 2 is a great option. But something like life insurance, when I put a plan in place for somebody, I need to know that they've got a life insurance policy, because I need to make sure that if they die, when they die, that those benefits are going to get where they're supposed to go, and that route is consistent with the plan. I think the two biggest ones I would see is people will name a minor child, which is not a good issue, because now you're involving the court for some period of time, or they're naming a family member with the thought that family member will take care of it for the child. Again, in a perfect world, that might work, but there are better ways to do that are inexpensive, that give you the protection that you need, that allow you to control the use of the money for the child, and just all around will make things much easier. That the situation I'm thinking about, I had a 15-year-old that inherited or was a beneficiary of $1 million life insurance policy. That was great for him.
My son would buy a truck, a lake property, and lots of fishing rods.
And he would have been able to do all that at 18.
Right, exactly.
But not at 15.
Not at 15.
Well, true.
But so he would have had a 3-year period where the court would have had to have been involved. But at 18, he would have gotten a very sizable check with no strings attached, and the ability to do with pretty much whatever he wanted with it. To me, that's a bad result. There's a mechanism, again, going back to the idea of trust, where we can name the appropriate beneficiary, make sure a trusted advisor or a trusted fiduciary gets the money, holds it, uses it for college tuition, not for, a monster truck.
Right, exactly.
Those are the kinds of
In my day, it would have been a Corvette.
Corvette, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
But that's where the idea of the estate planner, the financial planner working together for the client's benefit really comes into play, I think.
And Chris, one last point to tie into what David was saying. I know we're almost out of time. No matter what your will says, your life insurance beneficiary designations, if they contradict your will, that's an important thing to understand. It's no matter what your will says, if you haven't changed your beneficiary designations to match what your will says, you're probably going to have a problem.
Interesting. Well, that's a great tip for our listeners. So it flies. I just can't believe the show is already over. We've been really talking about some fascinating stuff. A little deeper today in terms of our material, but I think very valuable information. So I'd like to thank both of you for being on the show. David Dufault with Stodelma Law, thank you for your expertise. We couldn't have done this show without you. And Sandy, thank you for being a repeat offender here on Reshair Radio and bringing your expertise to the table. So once again, if you've heard something that was of interest to you, I want you to reach out to me and I'm asking you these questions. Do you have a will in place? Do you have your powers of attorney in place? Is everything lined up the way that it needs to be, even if you have them? If the answer is no, then you need to shoot me a text message or give me a quick phone call, and I will connect you with David or Sandy. My number is 704-277-4463. Again, that's 704-277-4463. To the both of you, thank you for coming on Reshair Radio. Hope to have you back again. And we wish all of our listeners a great Sunday morning. Have a great week. Thank you very much.
Sports fans know that the key to winning the big game is going in prepared. Right now, houses are selling fast. So if you're in the market for a new home purchase, don't just be prepared, be Movement Mortgage prepared. Charlotte's leading mortgage lender, Chris Reshair at Movement Mortgage, will tee you up with a free, fully underwritten, upfront pre-approval. Shop for the home of your dreams, already backed by an upfront pre-approval at Movement Mortgage. Call Chris today at 704-277-4463 or find Chris at www.themortgagegenius.com. Go into the game prepared with Chris Reshair of Movement Mortgage.
This is Chris Reshair, your host of Reshair Radio. As a mortgage professional, we interact with several industry-related professionals, and we see the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I have a choice to select a closing attorney either to purchase or do a refinance, I choose John Ringer with Hutchins Law Firm. He is a legal professional and he covers commercial and residential transactions. More than just a closing attorney, John wants to be your attorney for life. He can provide you insights you need to make accurate and informed legal decisions. As a Charlotte native, John has witnessed the tremendous growth and development of our city and region. As a part of Hutchins Law Firm with more than a quarter century of experience and 400 years of collective combined legal experience, they have what you're looking for. They have offices in Charlotte, Fayetteville, Wilmington, and Columbia, South Carolina. Please give John a call if you need an attorney, the right attorney, at 980-275-9810. That's 980-275-9810.
You've been listening to Reshair with Chris Reshaar, a seasoned licensed mortgage consultant with Movement Mortgage. Learn more online at themortgagegenius.com.